Okay, this week it's time to talk about board game adventures, or I should say, board game campaigns. As I reach for good old the board games that I recently went over. So here's like the cover of like the Wrath of Asher Dallin. So go over pretty much how do you kind of bring in a board game like these to a campaign. So now, if you want to get like a quick overview of the three board games I've gotten like over that one, like Wrath of Asher Dallin, The Legends of Drizzt, and then Castle Ravenloft. So those are the three board games I've recently gone over the past several weeks now. So kind of like introduce the board games, and so like now, and I've stated in those that they're kind of compatible with the ttrpgs, because you can, in essence, like I showcased with like the miniatures and everything. Like here's like the Bellar from Legends of Drizzt. We got Asher Dallin himself from like the second one. We got the miniature from like Castle Ravenloft, and we got like some like trolls and stuff, and like some of like the miniatures that like showcased before in the previous books and everything. So you also got, in a sense, like uh, hero figures too that you can use as like your PCs and everything. So like in a sense that you don't necessarily have to use these exact miniatures, but like what's great is that like they come with cards and everything. So like for instance, like Just Steward here, he's got like a character card. So like you got like on one side you got the first level, and then you got the second level. How you pretty much like level them up in the board game and everything. So like you got the character cards and stuff for like the actual characters, and of course like you also got like in a sense like monster cards and everything. So like you got a lot of stuff that's already pre-made for you. So like as DM, it takes a lot of the legwork out for you, and so you're able to like don't necessarily have to do as much prep work. Or also, if you do prep work and kind of use like in a sense like you don't necessarily would want to use like I guess adventure books. You wouldn't necessarily want have to use the rule book if you're bringing in this into like a ttrpg, because like you have like pretty much like the core rule books, like the player's handbook, DM guide, monster manual, stuff like that. So this would be kind of like useless bringing it into a ttrpg. But like what it could do is like if you're playing these and like you get a good basis, like okay, well like I have a decent understanding of how the game works, because like the rule books, if you do this first, like I said, like with the character cards, the cards here that give you like the basic stats and stuff. So like it could be like a great introduction to like a ttrpgs by doing these board games. So you have that foundation, so you kind of have the concepts of like, okay, so this is what an AC is, this is what two hit is, okay, this is what hit points are all about, this is like what the different classes are all about. It gives you that like a basic understanding, so then when you jump in, oh yeah, okay, I can see how this correlates from the coming to a board game into the ttrpg. So that's one way how you could quite possibly use this rule book, is kind of like an introductory stuff to it. But like yeah, I got the couple of the adventure books, like Castle Ravenloft and like Wrath of Ashdalen. And so how you could use these adventure books to kind of correlate into a ttrpg is actually you use like the scenarios that are in these adventure books to be like, oh hey, here's some ideas, and like skirmishes, and like kind of like how we introduce like big bad evil guys and everything, and like how do we introduce monsters and everything, like the Dragonelle or the mini dragon, and like the trolls that like that I just showcased a little while ago. So this is kind of like how we use like a board game to kind of like create like a campaign. So now like adventure books, like library behind me, I got a bunch of adventure books and everything's like Curse of Strahd, like Age of Apocalypse, or like the Vecna Eva Ruin, Shadow of the Dragon Queen. There's like also like Call of the Netherdeep. There's a bunch of adventure books that you can use as a DM that are pre-made. So like I've kind of gone over that in like a previous video as well. So kind of like the same kind of concept, is that like this in a sense gives you not necessarily a fully fleshed out pre-made adventure like the ones I just mentioned, which like of course like for instance Curse of Strahd takes you from like level 1 to all the way to level 10. These ones you probably would have to like do a little more legwork with like pulling like this scenarios out, like for instance like Adventure 1 right here, like a day in the life of a hero. What this the way this is set up is for the actual board game itself. So like you use the tiles, and like you place down the tiles, you place down the miniatures, and then like you play out like a board game. And it does come with these do come with d20s, and you're rolling like a d20 like for like attack and stuff like that. So it gives you, like I said, the basic concepts of like an actual TTRPG in the board game format. And so this is a great way for to introduce yourself to TTRPG. So if you find yourself kind of like in a sense intimidated by like pulling out like the one of the player's handbook or something, and like, oh my god, there's so much information in this book and everything. This is where board games come in, so you can jump in like, oh hey, here's an introductory to like in a sense the world of D&D through board games. And so now when you take something like this from board games, like, oh hey, this is awesome, and now I want to do my own adventure, you can take like the for instance these sceneries, introduce like your characters, and like of course you're going to want to do what's known as a session 0, which is pretty much like a kind of like the groundwork for creating your campaign. So in session 0, you're having like your PCs create their characters. So like they could all like whether they like maybe go off as like a barbarian, or maybe like a cleric, or like even like a rogue or something. You create your characters beforehand, and then like you kind of create like the background of like what the campaign is going to be all about and everything. So like for instance like this adventure book, what you can do is like once you flesh out your characters, you get their abilities like the strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. You get all their gear, their like hit points, their classes, their like races, whether they're elf, dwarf, or something completely different like dragonborn, or maybe even playing an orc or something. What you can do is that session 0, get those characters fleshed out, then get your back like your campaign set. Like, okay, look, we're going into the Forgotten Realms. We're going to like a Wrath of Ashdown. So like we're going to use this concept of like using like the Red Dragon of Ashdown as kind of like this big bad evil guy, or like this external threat that's kind of like threatening like the countryside or whatever. And so now, as a bunch of heroes, we kind of like use that as a kind of a backdrop with these adventures, and we kind of use these scenarios in here to level them up. Like maybe we run them through like this adventure book. We use like kind of seeing the scenarios from Castle Ravenloft to kind of introduce them undead and everything, to kind of like maybe segue into like going taking like side quests, or kind of going off the rails, so to say, and then kind of sweeping back to like the main storyline. Think of like a massive multiplayer online role-playing games like EverQuest, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14. You got all those side quests and everything, so like you can have like a Castle Ravenloft right here as like a kind of like a side quest and everything that kind of intertwines with maybe like something like this. So like an idea that comes to mind for me is like maybe like Strahd himself kind of like makes like kind of like an appearance, and like you like he's, for some reason, he's been able to leave Barovia, and you use these adventures as like kind of like a sidestep, and like, oh, now like all of a sudden this vampire comes out of like the nowhere, and we kind of have to stop him. And then all of a sudden like oh hey, look, he was actually summoned here, and like you can use that as like a kind of hook to get them back into fighting like the good old dragon. So Asher Dallin summoned Strahd and everything, so we use the concepts of the adventure book and Castle Ravenloft kind of like as a sidestep, but then intertwine it into the main one, where like we use like the scenarios and Wrath of Ashdown as like the main driver of the whole campaign. So then we through this series of like going through these mini adventures, we maybe level them up like over like a few months of like sessions and everything. Every week, every other week, you level up from maybe level 1 to level 10, and then you're now starting to get closer and closer to getting to the big bad evil guy of the red dragon Astradalan coming to destroy the whole countryside and like have everyone pay tribute to him so he can, in a sense, increase his hoard and sit on it and everything, like a good old Smog from the Hobbit and everything. So this is kind of like a concept on how you could introduce the board game into a campaign setting for like a tabletop role playing games and everything, like D&D and everything. So this is just a video for an idea on how to like oh, hey look, I enjoyed doing these board games and everything, so how do I get into TTRPGs? Oh hey look, you've done these board games, you've got all the material you need. Like I said, all you really need to do now is pick up like the good old player's handbook, and boom, you've got like enough information with the player's handbook to do session 0, where you create the characters, you set the backdrop for the campaign using like these adventure books and everything, and like you have like in the player's handbook you got like much more in-depth like characters stats than you could find on like these little cards and everything. But like what's great about these is that they give you like a basis, and like maybe like if you're in a pinch for creating like NPCs or monsters and everything, you can pull out like something like a card like this or whatever, and then like or any one of these cards as like villains, or like here we got like Yavanel Bonray. Pronunciations always suck, and of course like we got Shimmer Gloom, so like it's like kind of like that miniature. So you got the different ideas for like different monsters and like villains. You can actually use like a good old like Regis Drist. Like you got like Brunner and like a Wolfgar. So you got different like ones where you can actually introduce like NPCs and everything. So maybe like the champions of Mithra Hall, these guys are known as. They come to help out the PCs and maybe clearing out like one of those side quests or whatever. Maybe like I said, Strahd was maybe somehow pulled from Barovia into the Forgotten Realms by Astradalan, and these guys come out to help you kind of like clear out those side quests where you kind of like in a sense send Strahd back to Barovia, and then get yourself back onto like the main quest of defeating the evil red dragon Astradalan and everything. So this is like a concept of like actually using board games as a campaign idea. So that's like kind of like the concept of this video, to give DMs and or like players or like people that are brand new ideas to be like, oh hey, here's another like a tool in your toolkit that you can use to create campaigns and everything. So this one all about bringing the board games into like the TTRPG, or in a sense book realm. So this that's another way to have fun with those TTRPGs.